So, if you want to grab your handout that's on your chair, you will see we are back in Ecclesiastes today for a little bit of a reality check, right? I think Solomon's pretty good at the reality check stuff. All right, I'm going to have to go all the way back. Don't look. Close your eyes. No. Jan, if you can roll the mouse up there just to get rid of that little window, that's going to get probably annoying for everyone looking at that. Just run it to the right and down a little bit. To the right. To the right. To the right, right. There you go. There you go. Perfect. And then drop it down. The mouse back on your own screen. Oh, not that. Okay, you're going to have to hit present there. Nope, don't have to do that. So just, Jan, Jan, hear my instructions real quick. Just hit present. In the upper right there, there's a blue button. Perfect, and then run the mouse all the way down to your screen. Awesome. And I should have control. I do. Victory. All right. So, we are back in Ecclesiastes, back to a little, hopefully some soberness about life. If you joined us for the first two times we were in Ecclesiastes, there's this moment kind of after I'm done teaching where it's dead silent in here and we're all feeling a little on the depressed side. So expect that. That's probably going to happen again today. But it's for good purpose. I want to keep our focus on the purpose, which is that Ecclesiastes means speaker of the assembly or keynote speaker. Our keynote speaker is Solomon, the wisest man who has ever lived. There was no one like him before him, no one like him after him has come. And he spent his life pursuing wisdom. And in particular, he spent his life trying to find out the big questions of life. What the answers are to the big questions of life, like where can I find fulfillment? We all have that question. Where can I find purpose? What is the real source of meaning in life? And he spent his life pursuing the answer to these questions under the sun. That's a phrase that he'll use multiple times throughout his writing. In fact, he'll use it today. And it's the idea of he searched this whole world, this whole material world, and focused on what could be found out, what answers could be found out in this world. Not looking beyond this life, not looking beyond this world, but just in this world. And he spent his life doing this. And he's the wisest man on earth, right? So probably he was the guy who should be doing that, right? I'm feeling a little hot. Does it feel loud to you guys? No? You guys are good? Okay. Just seems a little hot to me. No, sorry. Audio levels are loud. Is it loud out there? Yes. Sorry. Hot levels. I'm actually kind of, it's a nice temperature in here right now. Having a hot flash. Now, the unfortunate thing about Solomon's quest is that he ends up finding out the answer to a lot of things that don't work. A lot of things that you cannot find meaning in, you cannot find purpose in, but that people do try to find meaning and purpose in. He pursued all of the ways that people in the world were trying to pursue answers to this question, and he was the one who figured it out, who came to the end of the answer to the question. And what he found was a lot of disappointment. In fact, the last chapter he talks about, it just brought a lot of grief to himself because he just attended funeral after funeral after funeral of his dreams, of things he thought where he would find life, and he found out he did not find life there. He did not find meaning there. He did not find ultimate purpose there. Today, there are many people pursuing meaning in their life. This is that survey that we had where Pew Research just asked an open-ended question to Americans and said, where do you find your sense of meaning? Where are you pursuing meaning in your life? And if you look through that list, if you can see it there, a lot of these things you would go, yeah, that makes sense. You might even have tried to pursue meaning in your life through these things. You might right now be trying to pursue meaning from these things in your life. And some of the highest pursuits of our culture are on this list. Money is what people say. That's where I think I might be able to find meaning and purpose, is in money. That most people in our world, we're kind of in this place where we're like, at least in America, where we're like, we despise the rich, right? We don't want to be rich, but then we tend to want what the rich have, right? And so what we typically say is, I don't want to be rich, I want to be comfortable, right? Which is really saying, I want to attain enough wealth to where I'm fulfilled. Once I reach that, then I'm good. I don't have to be rich. I just want to get to that point where I'm comfortable, right? We tend to orient our lives around pleasurable experiences. Our culture says really the only limit on pleasure is whether our pursuit of pleasure affects someone else or hurts someone else. And so we say to our late teens and 20-something-year-olds, go live it up a little bit. Go sow your oats a little bit, right? Everybody's going to do it. We just expect it in our culture. YOLO. You only live once, right? You guys familiar? YOLO. You guys texting that on a regular basis to one another, YOLO. They say, go make your mistakes, right? Everybody's got to go make their mistakes. Suck the marrow out of life. And really only prudishness keeps people from pleasure. That pleasure is actually a pretty good pursuit. And our culture seems to have an insatiable appetite for that pleasure, right? We exalt the well-educated in our society. So we promote learning because education are going to give you the keys to success in life. And if there's some sort of a moral problem in our society, what's the solution? More education, right? We just got to educate people to morality. Good luck. I don't know if you remember these commercials in the mid-'90s. I grew up in the mid-'90s, so I remember these clearly.
Let's try an experiment. I want you to think of the...
Oh, we're going to need a little more volume out of that. Are we there? All right.
10 things you want most out of life and just yell them out at me. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. That's good. Hold it.
Spotify's playing there, guys. There we go. All right.
Me too. Okay, now, stop.
I was lost, but he brought me into his life for...
Just got to pause it. Gracias. All right, let me set this up because we missed just a tad of it. It's Matthew Perry. He was big on Friends. He said, throw out what you want in life. Tell me what you want out of life, okay? And he starts pretending to write it down. Here we go. Oh, now I need control again. Sorry, Jan, I'm just throwing you for some loops today. All right, here we go.
I'm going to show you a way that you can have all of these things happen. Pretty neat, huh? Okay, now cue the music and that star thing.
The more you know. Anybody remember those commercials from the mid-'90s? Just trying to say, you got to be educated, right? And his thing is, all of your dreams, whatever you want, you can attain if you just stay in school, right? Get a little more education. We also respect career, hard work, work ethic. In fact, I read an article a number of years ago that it made a case, and I think a good case, of the fact that we really like when people think we're busy, right? When someone says, how's it going? And we go, man, I'm swamped. I'm just so busy with so many different things. And we don't like it if someone's like, yeah, I don't got much going on. Like, I'm pretty lazy most of the time. I go to work's super easy. Like, like we have a negative perception of that person, right? Because work ethic is good. We like hardworking people, hardworking Americans, right? Well, on these 4 things we just covered, Solomon has some things to say about these things. So let me pray, and we'll sit at the feet of the wise one and learn. Lord, we do just want to come to you today. Already made this request, but that we would learn from these truths, that we would allow Solomon's wisdom to become our wisdom, and that we would be changed by these truths. I just pray the biggest thing, I've been praying all week, that just the barriers that our mind is going to want to push up against these things, that you would just tear those things down. That we would take them in, that we would consider them, even if they're hard things to consider, even if they're things that will cause us to reorient our lives. Lord, I pray that you would do that. You would do that work of reorienting our lives around things that truly do matter and not these things that Solomon's about to destroy our perceptions on. Lord, help me just to be clear with his words, and that you would be glorified as we learn from you. In your name, amen. All right, so he starts here in chapter 2. It says this. He said, I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure. So enjoy yourself. And behold, it too was futility. I said of laughter, it is madness, and of pleasure, what does it accomplish? So Solomon sets out to seek pleasure in his life, pleasurable experiences, and he's going to test it. Basically, he's going to set up an experiment in his life and try to get as much pleasure out of life as possible. He's going to describe that for us here in a second. But his conclusion is, right away, he just states his conclusion. He doesn't want to leave us hanging. It's a waste of your life. It's futility. You are not going to find the meaning and the purpose and the significance that you want out of pleasure in your life. If there is any part of Ecclesiastes that I would just want to shout to the United States, shout to Americans, it would be this: that most of our pursuits in America are surrounded by this pursuit of pleasure. More pleasure. And so Solomon's like, I'm going to look at the nature of pleasure. Like, what would it be like to only fill my life with just pleasurable experiences? Just things that would make me laugh, just things that would make me feel good all the time, live, laugh, love. I'm going to take it all and and wrap myself into that every experience would be that way. And imagine for yourself, like, if you had the wealth and the power and the privilege to be able to get rid of anything in your life that did not bring you pleasure. Like, there's an unpleasurable thing in your life, you can just like, be gone. You're out of here, unpleasurable thing. And you would fill your life with every single thing that would make you happy. Do you think you would attain to real meaning and purpose in life? I mean, we want to say, we like to tell ourselves these things like, money can't buy happiness, right? But I actually think our true feelings are closer to this. Money can't buy happiness, but it can buy you a jet ski. Have you ever seen anyone sad on a jet ski? Or this one, money can't buy me happiness, but I'd rather cry in a mansion. Right? Or money can't buy happiness, but it sure makes misery easier to live with. Or this one, money doesn't buy happiness, but it buys everything else. Right? We say money can't buy happiness because I think we know, we've seen it enough that it really typically cannot do that. We have plenty of people with plenty of money that don't seem very happy, right? But I think in our heart of hearts and in our deepest thoughts, we think, it might for me. Listen to the wisdom here. Verse 3, I explored with my mind how to stimulate my body with wine, while my mind was guiding me wisely. and how to take hold of folly. Folly is like what other people might consider foolish or imprudent or unwise or excessive. I'm not going to go by anyone else's standards on this. I'm going to pursue all of the excessive things in life. He says, until I could see what good there is for the sons of men to do under heaven the few years of their lives. I enlarged my works. I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards for myself. I made gardens and parks for myself, and I planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made ponds of water for myself, from which to irrigate a forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves, and I had home-born slaves. Also, I possessed flocks and herds, larger than all who preceded me in Jerusalem. Also, I collected for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. I provided for myself male and female singers and the pleasures of men, many concubines. He's describing this life of him having really unlimited resources, which in his time, he definitely had unlimited resources, right? He could buy anything. He could do anything he wanted to do. Solomon had everything he possibly could have, and he just made it bigger and bigger and better and better. He had homes for every whim. He had vineyards that were flowing with every kind of intoxication. He had recreation of every kind. He had the best foods at every meal. He had slaves at his beck and call to fulfill any desire anytime he wanted it. He had riches beyond anything that we could imagine. He had the best entertainment day and night. He had the pleasures of men, which literally means every luxury imaginable to humans. He had it. You name it, he bought it, he had it. He had concubines like you could not imagine for every sexual pleasure he could possibly imagine being fulfilled. In fact, we know he had at least 700 wives and 300 concubines. Just think about that. Just think about the sheer number of women that were there at his beck and call. Now, maybe some of these things on this list, you'd be like, I don't really care about that thing. But he's basically saying whatever you might care about in your life, if you could get all of it and have more of it and have everything you ever imagined, just like I had everything I could ever imagine, every pleasure that could possibly be, I did it. I tried it. I did this experiment. It's done. Verse 9 says, Then I became great and increased more than all who had preceded me in Jerusalem. My wisdom also stood by me. I was also super smart. All that my eyes desired, I did not refuse them, and I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. For my heart was pleased because of all of my labor, and this was my reward for my labor. Not only did he have every pleasure imaginable, and he didn't refuse himself anything, he also had greatness on the earth, the respect of the greatest leaders on the earth. He was a world leader, and leaders from other countries came to him to sit at his feet and learn from him. Imagine the power and the prestige of that, right? Imagine if every leader of every government on earth was coming to sit at the feet of our president, the power that would grant him. Solomon had this. And he justified indulging in all this stuff because he's like, I deserve this. I built this. This is my wealth. Look at the work I've put in to get to a point where I can attain to every pleasure known to man. It's a little bit like, although not quite, like retirement, how we view retirement, right? Although a lot of you are retired and you're probably not thinking, man, I'm living it up, right, with every pleasure known to man. But it's like we think, oh, you know what, I'm going to work hard, work really, really, really hard and build up wealth so that I can retire and have a pleasurable life for the end of my life, right? He's like, I did all this work. And I thought maybe there would be satisfaction there. Look at verse 11. Thus I considered all of my activities which my hands had done, and the labor that I had exerted, and behold, all was vanity, worthless, empty, and striving after the wind. like trying to run after the wind and catch it. How dumb is that? And there was no profit under the sun. You might go, well, there was profit, right? You were rich. You had everything you could ever imagine. Your balance sheets had to be high. He's like, yeah, sure they were high, but the actual true profit to my life, flatlined. His conclusion is he enjoyed every pleasure possible, and all of it was vanity. All of it was empty. All of it was meaningless. He thought it might have purpose, but it was like chasing your tail, chasing after the wind. Pointing your hand out if you want to fill it in there, is even if someone could have everything they ever wanted in this life, they would only discover that it would all ultimately mean nothing. Now, a way you might push back at this is you might go, you know what? Well, you know what? Solomon didn't have what we have today, right? If he had all the wealth he had and he lived today with all the modern things we have, maybe he could have found meaning and fulfillment in those things. Okay, tell yourself that, right? Maybe Solomon is just a killjoy, right? It's just his personality. You ever met those people like all of the world is just depressing all the time? I used to have a guy on our youth staff who I loved the guy, and he loved Jesus with everything he was, and he was a great youth leader. But every time I talk to that kid, he's like, yeah, life stinks, right? Like there was nothing good about life ever. Maybe Solomon's just a killjoy. And if I was in his shoes, I could have found meaning in that. Okay. Tell yourself that. Or maybe instead, our response to this wisdom should be to close our mouths, open up our ears, and listen to the wisest man on earth tell us it's empty. He's been there. He climbed to the top of the mountain and picked up the cup that was supposed to be full of meaning, and it was empty. And he's yelling down at us, hey, it's empty, don't come up here. There's nothing in here. And we could still choose to climb the mountain and try to find it, but that would be pretty dumb of us to do that. Verse 12 says this. So I turned to consider wisdom, madness, and folly. For what will the man do who will come after the king except what has already been done? Which, by the way, is his shout out to us in the 21st century saying, nothing you create in the 21st century is gonna change the conclusion, right? We shouldn't think it's going to change the conclusion because it doesn't. He says, and I saw that wisdom excels folly as light excels darkness. And the wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. His argument here is which is better? To live a wise life or a foolish life? To allow wisdom to help us to see life clearly, or to live in the delusions of life? That's the madness word he uses here. And Solomon does say it's better to be wise, because it makes a difference in how we live life. It would be like walking around this planet all the days of your life, and there being no light on, right? No sun, no moon, no electricity to turn, fake light on, or electrified light on. That there was absolutely no photon of light in all of creation, and you lived life that way. Like, I can't even imagine what that would be like, but imagine we could imagine that, right? Would it be better to live like that, or to live with the lights on and the sun, shining on us and the lights pouring down on us? Better to have light, right? He's like, wisdom is like having light. Makes life easier to navigate, to see pitfalls before they come. So it is better to be wise. But the moment he says something positive, he's got to counterbalance it. And yet I know that one fate befalls them both. Then I said to myself, as is the fate of the fool, it will also befall me. Why then have I been extremely wise? So I said to myself, this too is vanity. For there is no lasting remembrance of the wise man as with the fool, inasmuch as in the coming days all will be forgotten, and how the wise man and the fool alike die. Well, that's positive. Even though it is better to be wise, he says it's equally meaningless. You can live 100 years and be super, super smart, well-educated, know a lot about a lot, and then what happens? You die. What good are those smarts doing you 6 foot and 6 foot under? You could be dumb as a stump for your whole life, right? Know nothing about anything, make all the wrong decisions in life, and in 100 years, what's going to happen? You're going to die. And what does it even matter? This guy lived 69 years. We consider him pretty darn smart, right? But look where he ended up. This guy's made up, but he also ended up in the same spot. And he says, nobody remembers these guys, right? Like you go, wait, I remember Einstein, right? Okay. I pulled up a list that was compiled of the 40 smartest people ever recorded. In the top 40, we got Richard Rosner. Anybody? Marilyn Vasavan. Anybody? Christopher Langan. Nathan Leopold. Marnan Leibau-Kozer. Anan Kali. Adrigan DeMello. These ring any bells for anybody? Right? Some people on this top 40 you would recognize. Nadia Kumakova. Anybody? This is the top 40. How about the top 400? 4,000, 40,000. Nobody remembers these people. Different guy. The point is this. Both the wise man and the fool have the same meaningless end. Both the wise man and the fool have the same meaningless end. He finishes here, starting in 17. He says, so, and maybe you're going to make the same response that he has here. So I hated life. For the work which has been done under the sun was grievous to me, because everything is futility and striving after the wind. He looked at life and he started to hate life itself. Why? Because it all caused him grief. As he started to realize that it was all futile, it was all worthless, it was all empty, it was all trying to catch the wind, and you're just going to keep coming up empty time after time after time. Keep chasing your tail time after time after time. And we live in a world of people chasing their tails. Saying, you know what, I'm not very happy now. I'm not really finding true meaning and purpose in life now, but I know tomorrow I might. Next week I might. Next year I might. I just have to attain to the right level of wealth. I just have to have enough pleasure in my life and I'll have it. I just got to have enough education. The more I know, the better my life is going to be. I just don't know enough yet. And it's chasing after the wind because you're never going to catch it. Verse 18, he says, thus I hated all the fruit of my labor, for which I had labored under the sun. for I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool? Yet he will have control over all the fruit of my labor for which I have labored by acting wisely under the sun. This too is vanity. You get what he's saying there? He's like, I did all this stuff where I increased all these works. I had all this wealth. I had all this wisdom, all this knowledge. Like everything you can imagine, I had it. And now I hate that I have it because I'm going to die. You know, he's toward the end of his life. I'm going to die, and I'm going to leave it to some guy, some kid, who I don't know what they're going to do with it. They might be wise. They might be a fool. His boys were fools, but, it wasn't good. He's like, I can't take it with me. I had this massive wealth that brought me nothing, and so maybe it would bring me meaning and purpose to leave a legacy, right? To pass it down. It was meaningless to me, but I'll pass it to someone else who maybe it'll be meaningful to them. And he's going, that's silly, right? If it's meaningless, it's meaningless, no matter who possesses it. And on top of that, even the accumulation of that wealth, it won't last. Maybe they'll use it well, maybe they'll use it how I want them to use it, but maybe they'll squander it and use it really poorly. And by the way, his fear is well-founded. At least here in America, it's well-founded. The statistics are not good. Do you realize that 70% of wealthy families will lose all of their wealth in the first generation? 70%. And 90% by the second generation. Those are not good odds, right? Legacies are not the thing to hang your hat on. Imagine working hard all of your life to build wealth for your children and your children's children, right? Your descendants. And you work hard day after day after day after day, and you start accumulating things, and you're scrimping and saving and holding yourself back from pleasures you could have or things you could enjoy so that you could leave a legacy for your children, right? And then at the end of your life, the last day of your life, you have to stand in front of a craps table. You guys know what that is, right? The dice gambling game. With 2 dice and roll them. And if they hit on anything but a 6 or an 8, you lose it all. That's the chances that your legacy is going to last. It hits on a 12, it hits on an 11, 10, 9, 7, 5, 4, 3, 2. It's gone. And all of that scrimping, all of that saving, all of that passing on, there's nothing left. It's gone. So I think we can understand his thoughts. Oh, there you go. There's craps. Verse 20 he says, "Therefore I completely despaired of all the fruit of my labor, for which I had labored under the sun. When there is a man who has labored with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, then he gives his legacy to one who has not labored with them. This too is vanity and great evil." Which, by the way, studies that have tried to study this phenomena of the 70% and the 90% of the legacies being gone, they study, one of the results of their study is this thing that he's describing here. Because the children and the grandchildren don't labor for it, they don't work for it, they're not the ones who accumulate it, it contributes to their inability to keep it, right? So he's like, they didn't labor with me. It's vanity. It's meaningless. For what does a man get in all his labor and in his striving with which he labors under the sun? Because all his days, his task is painful and grievous. Even at night, his mind does not rest. Can you just picture Solomon sitting up at night trying to figure out this conundrum? He says, this too is vanity. He says, I've been striving day and night in my pursuit for meaning. I've worked to build a massive empire. I've worked to indulge in every pleasure imaginable. I've worked so that I can pass on that knowledge, right? He wanted every wisdom, every pleasure imaginable so that he could tell others, hey, look, pursue this pleasure, because that's going to be meaningful. But he worked and he couldn't find it. He worked to be the smartest man alive. He worked to gain power and respect from men. And then he's just handing it all over, handing his massive empire over to someone who doesn't even know how to build an empire. Someone who can lose it just as quickly as he gained it, and maybe even quicker. He's just handing over every pleasure imaginable to this next generation. And by the way, his boys indulged in many pleasures, which they have no clue how empty it is. And they can lose all those pleasures as quickly as he gained them. And none of his descendants would be as educated as he is. They had not earned the power and respect that he had. And so he's looking at it going, the chances of them holding on to this stuff, so fragile. And let's say, hypothetically, it got through a generation, and they maintained it all. And it even got through 2 generations, and they maintained it all, maybe even grew it a little bit. 3rd generation can lose it just as quick. 4th generation can lose it just as quick. 5th generation can lose it just as quick. How can we put meaning into this thing where your balance sheet can be back to 0 at any point in time? Which, by the way, all of our balance sheets can be at 0 at any point in time pretty quickly, right? It's super fragile. And we're trying to place the meaning and purpose in our life in our accumulation of a balance sheet. It's crazy. So this is where he lands. He says, there's nothing better for a man than to eat and drink and tell himself that his labor is good. This also I have seen that it is from the hand of God. For who can eat and who can have enjoyment without him? For to a person who is good in his sight, he has given wisdom and knowledge and joy, while to the sinner he has given the task of gathering and collecting, so that he may give to the one who is good in God's sight. This too is vanity and striving after the wind. He's looking at his own life, and if you remember when we talked about Solomon gaining his wisdom, he gained it from God. Because God said, I'll give you anything, and he says, I want to be wise. I want to be smart about how to run my kingdom. Right? And so God said, I'm going to give you smarts beyond anything anyone's ever had. Right? It's a gift from God. And he looked around his kingdom, and he looked around his life, and he was even talking about some of this early on, and he's like, you got all of these people who are actually just working for me, accumulating wealth for me. He knew where he got his wealth. It was on the backs of other people and their labor. It's like all of it is worthless. So he says, there is nothing better. That phrase is just resignation. He's like, since pursuing pleasure is meaningless, since amassing wealth is worthless, accumulating a bunch of knowledge is just insufficient for life, leaving it to someone else, that won't do either, then you might as well just consume everything that you have. Just eat. Just have fun, enjoy stuff. Tell yourself you did good work, you did a good job. Like that's all you're going to get out of it. Live it up. Enjoy life to the fullest. Richard Dawkins is a famous atheist. And so he doesn't believe in God. He doesn't believe in transcendent things. He doesn't believe in anything eternal. And he basically claims there's nothing more to this life than life under the sun, right? He's living in the life under the sun reality because he's like, there's nothing more than the material world. I can only find meaning and purpose from around me, right? This is what he says. He says, don't kid yourself that you're going to live again after you're dead. You're not. Make the most of the one you've got and live it to the full. Which, by the way, if there's nothing beyond this life, if there's nothing transcendent, if there's only life under the sun, I'm with him. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you try your very best just to get as much suck the marrow out of life, get as much pleasure out of life as you possibly could, because this is all you got. If there is only life under the sun, right? Here's the point on your handout. The future of all wealth is uncertain. So placing your confidence in someone else's hands for a possible future payoff is foolish at best. Let me read that again. The future of all wealth is uncertain. So placing your confidence in someone else's hands for a possible future payoff is foolish at best. Bottom of your handout, let's just read the summary here. It says, Solomon spent his life pursuing and attaining all of the wisdom and understanding this life can provide in his search for finding meaning, purpose, and fulfillment. He had the resources to fill his life with every pleasure imaginable and found pleasure ultimately unsatisfying. He compiled riches beyond anyone's wildest imagination and discovered its appeal fleeting. He was the smartest man of his time and learned it was never enough. Earthly legacies hang by the thinnest of threads, and the line is fraying. If this earthly existence is truly all there is, then it makes the most sense to eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we will die. Let me pray for us. Lord, while there's not a lot of hope in this passage this morning, there is hope in starting to clarify life for us. It's so easy in our world today to be distracted by flashy things, by pleasurable things that promise fulfillment for us and meaning for us. Things that want to draw our attention, things that other people say are important, and we think, maybe they are important. Maybe we will find what we need in that thing. Lord, help us to learn from this wise teaching. That at least if we're looking for education for what we need, we're not going to find it. If we're looking for pleasure for what we need, we're not going to find it. If we're looking for family legacies, we're not going to find meaning there. Lord, help us to see the emptiness of these things. To not only take Solomon's word for it, but also maybe observe other lives that we see in our time that are living empty, that never really seem to have enough. God, I know I'm thankful for plenty of demonstrations of this in some of the richest men on the planet who are public figures and clearly don't have things figured out. Clearly don't have enough because they keep pursuing something else. Lord, help us to learn from their example. Help us to learn from Solomon's example. And help us to strip away all the worthless things in our lives, the meaningless things in our lives. At least strip them of our attempts to give them meaning and truly try to pursue what does bring meaning. Pray this all in your name. Amen.
Why don't you guys go ahead and stand and